Hello, benders and non-benders, and welcome back to Avatar Generations. Now, for today, we are going to be doing our very first new character analysis, new unit analysis, new hero analysis, whatever terminology you want to use. We're going to be looking into some of our new characters, looking at the 4-star Kyoshi Warrior offensive class, and of course, the 5-star Suki. Now, starting with the 4-star Kyoshi Warrior. First of all, this character is the event character of the current Kyoshi Warrior event. You can get her duplicates, as well as what is basically her best in slot 4-star relic, completely free to play if you complete the event missions. Now, looking at the character herself, I personally have had a very, very good time using her. She is extremely fun, extremely easy, and packs punch for a character that's a 4-star. Certainly helps that you can get her powered up very easily. Looking at her skills, we have her basic, Fan Toss, deals swift damage to one enemy. Swift damage being damage based on the character's current speed stat. So the higher her speed, the higher this fan is actually going to do. And then increase turn bar of the caster by 15% if damage is dealt to a sideline enemy, and this percentage can go up to 30% when at max level, which again, the duplicates are very easy to get, so you can be getting 30% turn bar every time you actually hit the enemy. That can become very helpful very quickly if you're just trying to hit as many hits as possible, especially if you build her for speed. The next ability is her advanced ability, Think Fast. This one deals swift damage as well to a single enemy, and then grants increased critical hit to each ally for one turn. This increases the ally's critical hit stat by 30%. With max skill level, this can increase to up to 3 turns. This can also be especially important for a couple of reasons, one involving the Kyoshi Warrior's own kit, as well as your allies, because the more damage you do, or excuse me, the more crits you get, the more damage you do. Not even talking about other characters who do have abilities based on crit. And then her passive, Warrior's Courage. Enter a counter stance whenever you land a critical hit. This basically means whenever you land a critical hit, you get counter stance for one turn, giving you that all-important 30% counter damage, which you'll notice is kind of a trend with these Kyoshi Warriors. They love to counter. And the Kyoshi Warrior offensive version is no exception to that, with the levels being +1 duration at level 4 and +1 duration at level 6. Again, very easy. And then this also has Skill Mastery abilities. Skill Mastery 2, increasing speed for 2 turns when you enter counter stance. This plays very well with this swift damage. Again, these go based on speed, which means you get this ability for being in a counter stance, that's just straight up more damage you're going to be doing. At Skill Mastery level 3, you permanently gain increased crit chance by 5% when you land a crit. This can happen up to 3 times, meaning that not only are you getting that counter stance, you're going to be getting as many as 15% crit rate up permanently for that fight. And then finally, at Mastery level 4, reduce the turn bar of 2 random enemies by 20% when you enter counter stance. So not only are you just going to be freaking fast, but you can even be slowing down the enemy. All of this combined makes her an extremely deadly and difficult to deal with 4-star that can dish out some damage and run circles around the enemy. Very helpful and an exceptional bonus for her being very easy to get. Now, as far as her arts go, there's a few sets I would recommend, and you can mix and match some things. So a set to keep in mind is definitely the counter set. Now, this might seem redundant, but keep in mind she's not always going to be in a counter state. If you have even just a 2 or a 4 set, even if she's not in that counter stance, this can allow her to occasionally get away with a crit. or excuse me, a counter that can't crit. Another one that plays very well is, of course, a crit rate set. Can't go wrong there. The more crits she has, not only does she do more damage, but she's getting in those states more often. Additionally, another one you can definitely keep in mind is the speed art set. This would directly increase just her straight up damage. You're getting a 30% increase in speed. That translates directly to that swift damage. Looking at her relic, this is the event relic that came with her and probably her best in slot, the Kyoshi Warrior Katana. What this does is it has a 45% chance to inflict the special element on an enemy for 1 turn if the caster is in a positive stance or state when they attack. Basically, if she's in a counter stance, which if you're building her optimally, she's going to be in that very often, she can inflict the special element debuff on enemies. We will get into what those debuffs do at a later time, but basically that can help screw up the enemy while increasing your own damage. Okay, and then let's say you have the Kyoshi Warrior Katana on another character. Maybe you have that on your Suki. You want to think of something else to give her? You do have a couple options. There's the Dumpling Weed, which is actually another Kyoshi Warrior exclusive item. This actually grants an additional 12% HP whenever the holder of this receives a heal. This can be good if you have a character like Katara or Iroh on your team, so you have some healing coming in. This can help make your character a little bit more long-lasting, since the Kyoshi Warrior's defensive stats are not setting records. 2 more options are the Whale Tooth Blade, which is another 3-star, and at max, I suppose we can call that max relic level, for lack of a better word, when you get that many duplicates. The passive gives you an extra 15%, or excuse me, extra damage that ignores 15% of the enemy's defense stat when you use an advanced skill. So you're hitting like a truck with that advanced skill, and this is adding even more damage on top of that, as well as giving you a handy attack stat. I'm not really looking at stats, we're really looking more at the passives, but you can't go wrong with more damage, especially for this character. And finally, the Silver Lilies is another good one to keep in mind. At max level, it will have a 35% chance to reduce the advanced skill cooldown. So you will hit with an attack, and that attack could basically make your cooldown shorter, allowing you to use that hard-hitting ability that also grants crit rate. This can go very well as both increasing your own damage as well as keeping that crit rate up on all of your allies. So you do have a couple options here. Of course, you can mix and match, figure out what works for your team. Probably the Kyoshi Warrior Katana is going to be her best in slot, which kind of makes sense because it's the event relic that came with her. I also don't know if these are going to be going into the summoning pool at all. We'll have to wait and see how that works. And of course, we can't talk about the Kyoshi Warrior without talking about the fan favorite Kyoshi Warrior herself, Suki, the current event 5-star. Now, Suki is actually a defense hero, so she is actually bulkier than her Kyoshi Warrior sister. However, she can also deal some serious damage and cause some pain to the enemy. Looking at our basic, you have Fan Throw. This deals strike damage. What strike damage does, it actually has a 50% increased chance of a critical hit. Now, assuming I'm understanding that correctly, that's 50% of your current rate. So, for example, if your current crit rate is 20%, that increases that by 10%, but that's speculation on my part. It's difficult to confirm that sort of thing. Additionally, it removes any positive stances and states from the target. For example, if your enemy, if you've got like a pirate or something that is being a pain, has a counter stance going, you can remove that. Just get rid of that. Say, nah, we're not into that today. Her advanced skill actually deals expulsion damage. This has a 75% chance to remove up to 3 buffs on the target, and it actually ignores resistance. Resistance would normally prevent these abilities, these extra effects from happening, if the resistance is too high. But Suki doesn't care. She's going to remove those buffs if you do proc that 75% chance. Additionally, this deals increased damage based on the target's attack stat or if they're in the back line. Now, the way I read this, it's a little vague, but it says damage dealt increases based, which leads me to believe that she has her own base damage off of her attack stat, and that it does crank up based on the target's attack stat, or if they're in the back line, I guess whatever is higher, but hard to say for sure. Finally, we're looking into her passive, a Warrior's Heart. Now, just like the other Kyoshi warrior, this is a counter stance based passive. This one's much easier to proc though, because it happens whenever she is attacked or healed. If you have a character like Iroh or Katara in the team who is doing some healing, she will go into counter stance even for that. She will also gain increased attack for 1 turn when you enter that counter stance. So not only can you hit back at the enemy, but you can hit back at them hard. For level 3 and level 6, you get increased effect duration. It does not specify if this applies to counter stance, to the attack, or to both. If I were to take a guess, I would assume the counter stance, but it's a little hard to say. And then it also has some skill mastery effects. At level 2, you take 50% reduced damage for 1 turn when you enter a counter stance. Basically, you're going to be able to take an even better punch than usual and allow yourself to whip out as many counters as humanly possible. At level 3, she gets increased critical damage, just a straight damage buff whenever you do crit, plays really well with the crit rate effect boosting of the offensive Kyoshi warrior. And then Mastery level 4, just a straight 35% chance to stun enemies when attacking in a counter stance. I don't know if this actually applies from the counter attack itself, but if you have that counter stance going, you're going to be able to stun enemies every so often. Every, statistically speaking, 1 out of 3 shots, give or take, you're going to be stunning the enemy, which is just great for turning the fight around in your favor. Of course, being a 5-star, you're going to have a harder time getting some of these level buffs, but skill mastery is a free-to-play thing that is absolutely attainable. Even with the skill level, if you really wanted to max out Suki, you can get the skill tokens and crank her up through that, and that absolutely works. Looking at her arts, I currently have mine with a full lifesteal set. This basically heals her for a little bit of the damage she deals. Why do I think that's probably her best set? Because of all the countering. The more she counters, the more she heals. And the more she heals, the longer she can stay in the fight and dish out more counters. It's also worth mentioning that skill mastery level 2 increases her own defense. She's not going to be even taking as much damage, which gives her a great opportunity to heal up. If I had to recommend some other counter sets, I'd definitely say you can't go wrong with adding just straight up more counter. Also, crit rate, crit damage is not bad at all. Of course, her best in slot relic is going to be her War Fan. Now, keep in mind, I stand by what I say here. Do not summon for relics. Don't summon for 5-star relics. If you happen to get one, great, bonus. But never summon specifically for relics, because there's a chance you can miss out on a lot of stats if you're not able to get those duplicates. 4 and 3-star relics are good, but let's say that you do happen to get lucky and get a couple of these. We take a look at her passive. The passive increases damage dealt by a certain percentage, in this case 17 because I've had 2 fans. Increases damage dealt for 2 turns when you enter a positive stance or state. What this basically means is whenever you get into that counter state, at least the first time, you're just going to be getting extra damage for 2 turns. Your counters are going to be doing extra damage. Your abilities are going to be doing extra damage. This does have a 3-turn cooldown, so after it procs, It is going to take it a second, but if you keep in mind, you're getting the 17% increased damage for 2 turns. It has a 3-turn cooldown. That means, optimally speaking, you should only have 1 turn, maybe 2, depending on how the turn order works, of this effect not being up, so it can be extremely helpful. Looking at kind of some alternatives, she does have access to defensive abilities. You have the Mask of Ursa, permanently increase defense by 10% up to 3 times, at least at base level, and heal for 15% of your max health when you gain a defensive buff. I don't believe the counter stance counts as a defensive buff, but if you did have a buffing character, that can come in handy for you. Of course, again, the Dumpling Weed, very helpful if you have a healer on your team and you need to survive a little bit more. You do also have access to the Jawbone Dagger. You don't really get extra turns. I don't know if they're going to make that an effect in the game where somebody can maybe grant extra turns. This one's probably not going to serve you as well, but it does have at least the HP and attack stat. Of course, you have, same as before, Silver Lilies. You have Paku's Gift if you're able to get that. This one is... it can be helpful if you're trying to get debuffs on the opponent. I personally wouldn't recommend this, but it's something you can do if you would like. And then you have this Four Nations tile, which is more of a supporting ability, where you can grant some heals to your ally whenever you get a buff. And that's Suki for you. That's both of the Kyoshi warriors. Of course, be responsible. If you don't want to spend money, then don't. Keep it free to play as much as you'd like, or who knows, maybe you could even get some luck. If you wanted to do a couple summons, you might get lucky and get Suki on your first summon, who knows. Won't always happen, but just play it responsible, and of course the number one goal is to have fun. And that's really about it. These 2 characters are great. If you do get them, you'll have a great time. Hopefully, we will get some other new characters soon, and more opportunities to look at some great stuff. I think that's going to be about it for today. Hope you all have enjoyed this video, and I hope it's helped some people either make a decision if you wanted to summon on Suki, or perhaps you have and you were curious about what gear and arts are good for her. But I guess I will see y'all in the next video. Have a good one.